Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the Debrief on the Blood Red channel. We are live after Liverpool have somewhat surprisingly won a match. Yes, that's correct. Liverpool have won a game. Finally, it took their time happening, but they've beaten Wolverhampton Wanderers 1-0 in the FA Cup replay at Molineux. A pretty comprehensive performance, a lot better than we've seen recently. So welcome along, everyone. We are live, as I said, so make sure you leave your thoughts in the comment section. We'll get to as many of them as we can. But I'm Patrick Smith, and joining me today, we've got Liverpool.com editor Matt Addison. Matt, let's get straight into it. A pretty impressive performance. A lot of positive to talk about today, which is nice for a change, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like a while since we've done one of these together where it's been, as positive as this. I think there was, a number of really good performances, and I think it gives Jurgen Klopp a bit of a headache really going into Saturday, which is exactly what we all wanted to see really. I think, there was a number of changes really. I'm sure we'll come on to individuals, but the midfield just looked a lot better, a lot more solid. The attack as well, being able to press off the back of that. And, I'm sure there'll be players, Mohamed Salah, for example, isn't going to be left out at the weekend. And I'm pretty sure that there'll be one or two others. Addison's going to come back as well. But there are a couple of question marks, I think, particularly in the midfield, I would say, but in other areas as well. And yeah, just a really, really good performance from Liverpool. Wolves didn't do much. It has to be said. They really weren't particularly impressive, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and Liverpool have done that.
Yeah, we'll start with the positives then, as you say, plenty to take from tonight. I think the main one, though, is going to be the pressing that we saw, the tenacity with the Liverpool side. It's something they've really lacked in their previous few matches, particularly you think of Brighton, Brentford, sort of lackluster. Some players not exactly, I don't want to say they're not giving 100%, but the press today, Matt, was so impressive right from the off, wasn't it? I mean, Klopp's mentioned it. They've been working hard in training. We heard all about the Dubai training camp, but they've been working on pressing as a team. And tonight was a prime example of that, wasn't it? I mean, Wolves were put under so much pressure at the back. Really impressive stuff from Liverpool. Hopefully a positive sign for future weeks.
Yeah, you'd like to think so. I mean, I'd be surprised if Stefan Bajcetic played at the weekend. I'm sure we'll come on to him separately in a second. But it just all starts with the midfield, doesn't it? It's just that injection of youth and sort of the ability really just to be able to press and run is just purely a physical thing, I think, at the moment. And it's a bit of a shame that they can't rely on Naby Keita to do that more often because, generally speaking, he has been able to offer that. I think he was the difference really in terms of being that front foot player. We've seen, Jordan Henderson and various other players in the middle of the park. It wouldn't be fair just to single out him, but certainly on the right-hand side of that midfield three, Naby Keita was a lot further up the pitch, but he was able to be up there, but also to press and also to get back. And it wasn't like there was loads of big gaps in that Liverpool midfield. So I think he is one that I would look at for the weekend and think that, okay, it's going to be a very different game against Chelsea, but I think he's one that really has to be in that starting lineup now. They've got to do something different in midfield. And I think, he's done more than enough there to show really why it was such a strange decision that he didn't start against Brighton. I think it could have been very different. Obviously, the rest of the Liverpool team as well would have had to have been better for them to get anything from that match. But I think it was just a really good sign in terms of the ability to just plug him into that midfield and suddenly you can see a completely different side of it. You see a better version of Thiago, I think, because he's got better legs around him, and the whole team is transformed from that point. I think there's a number of issues at the moment with Liverpool, but it does all stem from the midfield. So if you can fix that, obviously then the knock-on effect could be quite big. So yeah, a real game-changing performance from Naby Keita. It's just a real shame that it is him that you're kind of relying on, because you can't do that twice a week every week or he will pick up an injury. So it's a tough one. I'm sure that the debate around his contract and all the rest of it will now start up again, but none of that has changed for me. Purely in terms of Saturday, I think he's got to come into the team.
Yeah, for me, it was my man of the match. I mean, that injection of pace, as you mentioned, is so important. It's something Liverpool have really lacked in midfield. I think the problem has been they've always been second to ball. They've lacked that speed going forward, especially when they're counter-pressing and in transition, etc. And even on the ball, turning and beating midfielder. We've seen Liverpool have the ball turned over against them so many times in recent weeks, whereas Keita always seems to wriggle through. And for me, just such an impressive performance from him today. Really, really impressive, Naby Keita. But alongside him, Matt, we had Stefan Bajcetic. I mean, for such a young player, it seems like he's got a very wise head on those young shoulders. Really composed, mature display from him. I mean, arguably a helping hand from his compatriot of sorts, Thiago Alcantara. But has he got a case now, Matt, to be knocking on the door for number 6? We've mentioned it on a few podcasts of late, sort of tentatively. But I mean, if he plays like he does tonight, there's no reason why he shouldn't be starting, is there?
I think he'll get games. I'd just be surprised if it was at the weekend, and I don't think it can be, the solution. I don't think Liverpool can suddenly look to him as the one to fix their problems. It just wouldn't be fair to him at the age that he is and the inexperience. I just think, Liverpool are in, regardless of what they've done tonight, and there will be more future tricky patches. There'll be more games like the Brighton game, maybe not quite so bad, but there will be more instances like that moving forwards. And I don't think it's one way you can just plug him in and say he is the solution. But having said all of that, he was absolutely brilliant tonight, and I've seen it so many times really with him. I think a few people will have made a snap judgment really when he played against Manchester City and got a little bit overrun, but
yeah.
In any other game, I think you'll see a performance a bit more like this, and I think you wouldn't be completely shocked if he played on Saturday. I just think that the age he is, it just wouldn't be fair to put that sort of pressure on him. But maybe in other matches, beyond that, you'd look at maybe possibly not the derby, but possibly one or two after that. Wolves obviously coming up as well in the Premier League as well. So there are going to be opportunities for him, and I think he was really, really composed in there. And I was slightly surprised that Thiago played actually, but in hindsight, maybe it did make a little bit of sense to have those two together. I think when you've got the experience and the dominating sort of in possession that Thiago brings you, I think that really can bring the best out of Stefan as well. So yeah, it was good signs. It was really, really good, but I'm just reluctant to go all out on he is the solution. Similar with Ben Doak, actually. I think he was really, really sharp when he came on. Really love watching him play, but there has been calls lately from certain people, mainly on social media, but people have kind of said possibly that he could come into the team, or you can bring in the youngsters and they can't do any worse. I do think they are both brilliant, but I think for the long-term health of them and for Liverpool, I think probably hold them back a little bit before throwing them in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a lot to ask throwing them in at this stage. I mean, with Bajcetic as well, you mentioned there making his first team debut, I believe, as a starter against Manchester City. I mean, what a baptism of fire that was. De Bruyne, Gundogan, Rodri, that's always going to be a tough test for him. So hopefully we can see snippets of him like we have tonight. And I'd really like to see more of him play. And you mentioned Ben Doak there. I thought it was absolutely superb when he came on, so silky on the ball, immaculate touches, getting out of tricky positions for such a young player. He really, really impressed me tonight. But I think the thing, Matt, we don't want to really, jump to conclusions and say Liverpool have found a solution, the midfield solved, because it's not. Tonight is a very good performance in a very bad season so far. But we have to be fair, the Wolves midfield is arguably, one of the strongest in the league. Granted, they're in a really poor position, having a terrible season. But Ruben Neves, Matheus Nunes, who we don't know all about because the Liverpool transfer links there. I really don't think we should underestimate this performance because there's been really good individual displays tonight. But Matt, going forward, Cody Gakpo again, he had a few decent movements getting through the channels, going down the line. But a bit of a difficult one for him again, wasn't it? He's not quite found his feet yet. He's not hit the ground running as, we couldn't really expect of him. But he's just slowly struggling to, make a massive impact that some fans may have hoped for, isn't he?
Yeah, it's not been an easy start for his Liverpool career. I think tonight was probably the first opportunity that he would have had to really sort of stamp his mark on a game. He didn't quite do that. There's a couple of runs where he just went a little bit too soon, but I think he will sort of get attuned with his players around him. And you've got to remember as well, as good as Harvey Elliott and to an extent Fabio Carvalho were, if he has, say, hopefully in future weeks, Diogo Jota or Roberto Firmino, and certainly Mohamed Salah at the weekend, possibly Darwin Nunez as well. Suddenly that looks, completely different, and he's got, certain different relationships to build on within that attack. So even tonight, it wasn't exactly the perfect, opportunity for him to come in and impress. There was a couple of moments where he showed that movement, and I think you can kind of see what he's going to bring to Liverpool. He pretty much in the first half in particular was having a shot every time he got the ball, and I think it'd be interesting for him to see where does he actually prefer playing. I know he spoke a lot when he first came in of wanting to play as that false nine position. I wonder whether that will be his role as soon as Darwin Nunez comes back. I would imagine possibly he might just shift back to the left hand side again. So even that, it's not really been a fixed position for him up to this point in his career. So yeah, no real judgments from him. Liverpool have won. He's kind of done as much as he needed to in many respects to kind of edge his way into being a Liverpool player. But yeah, the big test I think will be Chelsea. I think that'll be possibly the best team that he'll have played against in his career, I would imagine. He's played a little bit of Champions League football, but mainly Europa League, I think. And obviously the Dutch League, it's going to be a big step up for him. So that'll be the one really that I think if he could score in that one, or if he could maybe just create a few chances, or put in a good performance, I think that would give him a lot of confidence. And let's be honest, Liverpool do need him to kick on and start scoring those goals fairly quickly, because Darwin Núñez has been a little bit inconsistent. The injuries that they've got elsewhere as well, there is a little bit of pressure on him to come in and hit the ground running. So yeah, I'm reserving judgment for now, but sooner rather than later he does have to start to kick on and show a bit more than what he has done up to this point, because like I say, Liverpool really need him to.
Yeah, maybe I was a little bit harsh in my line of questioning there. It's probably not the game for him tonight. A bit difficult service with obviously the wingers as mentioned. And there's a bit of a scrap if we're being totally honest. I mean, I don't want to give away any spoilers, Matt, for Friday's Blood Red podcast and the team selector. But are there any names from that starting 11 tonight? Obviously, there were 8 changes. Would you be letting any of them have a chance at Chelsea at the weekend?
I think probably Naby Keita is maybe the one that I think is as close to being definite as you can be. I think there's possibly an argument for Joe Gomez as well. I thought he was excellent tonight, even when he moved across to right back. Looked very good and very assured, but that would be a little bit of a risk. I think he played against Manchester City, didn't he, Joe Gomez, and did really well in that game at Anfield. But there has been other matches this season, even when he came on actually as a sub against Brighton. He wasn't, he wasn't as bad as Joel Matip had been, but he wasn't particularly brilliant either. So I think that would possibly be one that I would look at. Possibly, I would imagine that it'll be Matip that comes back in. But yeah, Naby Keita is probably the only one. I think, Harvey Elliott did really well, but then where do you fit him in? He's not going to play in place of Mohamed Salah. I think that's probably the long-term sort of, thing to weigh up with him as well. I don't think he's quite a midfielder. I don't think he's best certainly as a number 8 for Liverpool, but then how often is he going to get the opportunity to play in the forward line? I'm not too sure. So yeah, I'd probably save Elliott to be off the bench at the weekend. And yeah, Fabio Carvalho probably isn't going to play. He did okay tonight, but didn't do a great deal. The fullbacks, I'm sure, will come back in. Addison will come back in. I'm pretty sure Fabinho will come back in as well. So I think there will be a lot of changes, really. Probably Naby Keita is the only one just off the top of my head, but I might be tempted by a little bit of Joe Gomez as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. As impressive as tonight was, I don't think there's going to be too many surprises in the team selection at Anfield on Saturday. But anyway, Matt, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you as well to all of you watching along on the Blood Red YouTube channel. Make sure, everyone, that you stick around and subscribe, because we'll be bringing you Jurgen Klopp's press conference as soon as we have it. I'm sure he's got plenty to say after that very impressive win for Liverpool away at Wolves. But we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much for joining us once again, and we'll catch you next time on the Debrief.